Hello, it's Chris Taylor from Kinetic Avionics, and today we're going to upgrade the firmware on an SBS. Cover all models SBS-1, SBS-1e, 1eR and SBS-3. To do this you'll need your SBS connected to the computer via USB lead. You cannot do it via Ethernet. Okay, let's proceed. Let's see what I'm using. If I start base station, it tells me I'm using base station 175, which I've just updated the software. Let it run. It's always a good idea to do the firmware before you do the software, because sometimes there'll be features in the software that'll only work with new firmware. But anyway, let's just run it up, make sure it runs. And if I go help about base station, it'll pop up and tell me that I'm running software version 175 and I'm running an SBS-1eR, and there's my serial number. I'm not receiving any data because I've disconnected the antenna. When you update the firmware, it's a good idea to disconnect the antenna. Just speeds things up a bit for you. So shut that down, happy in the knowledge it's working okay on its current firmware. And if we now go to the Kinetic website, as base station, we've already done that as software. Now firmware, people think that they have to update the firmware for every machine, and what have you don't. Once you've updated your firmware, it's saved to the device, and you only need to update it if we bring out a new firmware. Once you've done it, you've done it. For the SBS-3, you'll need the latest firmware and the firmware uploader. For the SBS-1, the same. I've got an SBS-1eR, so I select this one here, SBS-1e and 1eR firmware. And if you've seen my videos before, you'll know that I keep all my stuff in the same place. A folder called SBS Updates, so I'm going to save there. So we'll leave that downloading, and I need the SBS-1eR uploader. If you've got one of the old SBS-1s, you may have a 5 volt or a 12 volt. If your serial number is less than 5,000, it's 5 volts. If it's greater than 5,000, it's 12 volts. And you download the appropriate one. As I say, I'm going to download the SBS-1eR uploader because that's what I've got. And again, save as, and save. And we just leave that running to download. Come to the SBS updates folder, and there we are, the two files are downloaded. So I've got the KFF file, which is the new firmware, and the prog USB lattice, which is the program that uploads the new firmware. Now to do that, you can't just click on it, you have to highlight it like I have, hold down the left hand mouse button, drag it and hover over prog USB, and it will say here open with prog USB lattice. Just let go of the mouse and up comes the little window, run, and you can do that, run. Now while that's running, I'll just show you the other thing you can do on some machines. If you've got an old XP machine, if you right hand click, you get the option, select that file, right hand click, open with, and then you have to navigate it. And if you're doing that, it says recommended programs. Well, it's certainly not that. Go browse, desktop, and this is where it's invaluable to put it in a folder that you know where it is. So if I go to my SBS updates folder, that's where it is, and then I click on that program. I'm not going to do it now because it's running in the background, but you click on that program, select open, and it pops up the dialog box the same as I've just done by dragging it over. I'll shut that down now. Now what you've got here is you've got rows of dots coming up. If you don't get those rows of dots, there's something wrong. The USB lead's not plugged in properly, the switch on the back of your SBS is in the wrong position, something's not right. So you get those rows of dots, and it can take anything up from 2 minutes to 5 minutes on the SBS-3. The reason I'm using the SBS-1eR is it's relatively quick to load. I just want you to see what happens once the firmware is loaded. And these dots just signify that it's writing data. So we'll let it carry on writing away its data. It's slowing down, which tells me that it's getting nearly there. Either that or my eyes are playing tricks on me. Da-di-da-di-da-di-da, ba-di-da-di-da-da. It's like waiting for the kettle to boil. There we are. Right, so that box has just disappeared. Right, the next thing you do is you disconnect your USB lead. Computer goes bidonk. Reconnect it, and it's just confirmed the connection. And then reconnect your antenna. You'll be surprised how many people ring me up and say, I've just reconnected my SBS after doing the firmware, I've not got any aircraft. Did you remember to reconnect the antenna? Because that's usually the problem. So then we just click here, run up base station again, and it should be running with the new firmware. There we are, we're off and running, and if I go to about base station, I can see I've got the latest build 519. There we are, so that's all running. So that's it. See you on the next video.